Heavenly Father, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business that will benefit our city and our citizens. We ask you to guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that the issues we face reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Stone, roll call, please.
Chair Weller?
Yes, here.
Vice Chair Barnes?
Present.
Member Bass?
Here.
Member Gessner?
Present.
Member Jameson is absent. Member Newcomb?
Present.
Member Williams?
Present.
Thank you. All right, the first item on our agenda is to review and confirm the ranking of the CRA Executive Director applicants. In our packet, we had the tally was provided to us, and we also had the individual rankings that each board member made. The top pick, based upon the adding up of all the numbers, was Miss Amanda Rodriguez with a total of 17 points. Following her was Miss Gonzalez, and then following her was Miss Tarella. I would like to know if everyone is in agreement with this, that we confirm that those are the ranking of the applicants as provided to you.
Minor, correct. Do you need a motion to accept?
Yes, well, just for the record, let's do that.
I'll make a motion. We accept the tallies for the candidates.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor made by Member Barnes and seconded by Member Williams to accept the tally of the applicants for the applicant rankings. Any further conversation, comments from the board? Any public comment? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed indicate by saying no.
No.
Motion passes 5-1. All right. So, Ms. Rodriguez, the position is being offered to you, which is our second item. Would you come up to the podium, please? First of all, congratulations. I assume you were going to accept.
Yes, amen.
Good. So we have now offered the position to Ms. Rodriguez as the part-time CRA Executive Director. We're very happy to have had you apply and glad to see that you've ranked number 1 for the position. The next item is to review and approve a contract for the position of the Executive Director. We don't have a microphone over there by our attorney to go over the...
Chair,
Yes, Member
can I
Barnes?
make a comment to Ms. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thank you for taking the time to put up with this long ordeal, hanging in there. I've reviewed your application, I've reviewed your interview, and I think you'll be a great fit, and I look forward to seeing what you do for the city.
You'll have to push the button in there. Is it on? I guess it is on. Ms. Johnson, could you go over the contract, please? Sure. And as she goes over it in different sections, if you have any questions on it, we'll ask as we go along.
We have copies of it.
We don't have a copy.
You don't have copies of it?
I got it on my tablet. I don't have a print copy.
I can go get Linda to run copies.
All right. We might take a little...
Unless you got some comments while we wait.
Do you have any comments while we wait for the contract?
Nothing like putting you on the spot.
Well, if you have any questions for those that weren't here for the interview, I'm more than happy to answer them for you.
I do have a question. I don't believe there's anything in here that talked about when you would be able to start to work. Do you have any time frames that you can let us know about, or?
It really is up
Restrictions?
to the board. I'm assuming it probably couldn't be before December 1st with the holidays coming up, and having to go through the background check if I haven't already. So anytime after December 1st.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Sure, I can think of one and you give me a little time.
Have you at this point walked through the city, familiarized yourself at all with the downtown area at least at this point?
I've driven through the city before. I was kind of familiar with it before. I've been here several times. Although looking around as I've been driving through the last couple of weeks, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was there. So seeing things new that I hadn't seen before. Reading the local newspapers, trying to get a feel for the city.
Assuming everything goes okay with the contract and everything, we will, if they haven't already, need to get you the plan, the CRA plan, and the budget. Trying to think of what else we would need.
The Florida statute.
Florida
on
statutes.
CRA.
Are you familiar with public records?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I believe we're going to have some training in the future that our attorneys are putting together, and you would probably want to attend that training as well.
We're going to make it mandatory for all employees.
Okay.
We have an office we set up, painted, and so it's ready for you. And on December 1, you will come over to the office up here, we'll sit down and talk, lay everything out.
Where will that office be at?
It'll be over there by Ginger,
In the trailer there?
in the trailer.
That's where Public Works is now?
No, they're in the other, there's two double wides.
Oh, okay.
So this is one that Ginger currently occupies.
The building, it's what, like, the building area is, what the building permits and stuff like that?
That's it.
Okay, okay. All right. Yes, Mr. Barnes?
As you may or may not know, we've just had an election. I'll be leaving. Linda will be leaving. Gloria James is over there. That's the new commissioner. I will make myself available anytime in the city. I have a lot of information that I can share with you about what we've done, what we tried to do over the years, and I will be involved in things going on in the city and downtown in the near future. So please, because I'm off the dais, don't hesitate to call me. Okay.
While we're waiting, why don't you, if you don't mind taking a seat, and maybe we can move on to the last item, the facade agreement, if we can get that out of the way.
Good idea.
Item 4 is to review and approve the CRA facade grant agreement. I personally have looked through it. It was presented to us before. I don't have any problems with what's in it. I do have one question, and that's on page 3, section 2.4. About the fourth line up, where it talks about further if the building or business lease is transferred. And if this is residential, I'm not sure what business lease.
Right, that business should be out.
Okay.
And that was what else I was going to talk to you about. This issue has come up before, where you all have discussed whether or not you wanted to impose anything on a residential, like you did with the business, in terms of selling if somebody sold their home. So I left it in there, presenting it to you. But I know that you guys had discussed it before, so I didn't know how as a board you wanted to move forward with that issue.
And I think that's under that section 2.4, where it talks about that it's basically, we're saying 2 years before you have to, if you move out before 2 years is up, then what you were given or granted would be prorated.
Right, and that's what we have in our business application.
But that one's 5 years, I
well,
believe.
yes.
That's 5 years,
Yeah.
and we reduced this one down to 2 years, I think.
Right.
Member Gestrin.
Thank you. I just question why we have that kind of a string, because if the money is granted to the business or the resident and they paint the facade and they fix whatever they say they're going to do. But let's say they have a tragedy, and I know you had offered in another meeting that perhaps we could come back, that person could come back under special circumstances. But boards change. And I just feel like it's unnecessary, because if we actually see the work done, it's completed, done right, well, and correct, why have that string? Because situations unforeseen can happen.
Right.
I don't think it's necessary. I think it's just another government control that's going to require someone to go back and if the transaction's completed, paid for, everybody's happy, but let's say the resident has to move or there's a death in the family or whatever it is, why make them come back here and resettle something when it was finished? I just feel like it's an unnecessary control for government and the person who received the grant.
Okay.
Very rare would it be abused, but so much of the time, the person that has to, you have one incident, and I don't know that we've had one yet here, but then all the people who adhere to the rules has to pay for that incident and be held accountable for this one exception or whatever you want to call it. And I think it's very unnecessary. Everything's done in good faith, but you're controlling someone's life. You're having something hang over their head. And situations do change, and it may not meet our deadline. The work was done. We're talking about a facade, painting the front of a house, or repairs. So that's just my opinion.
Member Newcomb.
Thank you. I think, Madam Chair, where we got into this problem at one time, and I do understand, whereas, and specifically I do agree with this, that if the work has been done, then we don't need to be standing over someone's shoulder saying, well, you can't sell, or we're going to put a lien against your house or your property because, you haven't done this or that and the other. But if you've completed the work, it's complete. I think where we got into this problem and this language problem was because I believe in the past that money had been allotted to different entities, businesses and things, that they were asking for more money. And then when the board asked to see their books as to what they did, what they had the money and what had they spent the money on that had been given to them in good faith by the CRA, they were not willing to produce those records. And that is, I believe, where we got into this thing that we needed to put some language in there. But if it's going to be like this, that they are committed to doing this within a set, I would say that we would be better off to say, you present records to us as to what you intend to do with the facade grant, and that maybe it needs to be completed within a certain amount of time, within the 2 years or whatever, and then it's done. I don't know. But I know that's how we got into the issue, was because the records were not produced.
Chamber facade grants that I participated in before, you had a certain amount of time to get the project completed. Once it was completed, then you were given the matching grant. This isn't set up that way.
No.
No.
Well, there's in the app, this is the agreement once the CRA grants a grant, but there is an application process, and in the application, there are certain paperwork that's required before you would give them a grant of money, and there are certain conditions in there on when they complete the project and how they get that money. So that is a condition, but that's in the separate application. This is the agreement, and we could certainly put some of that language in here if you're not happy with it, but some of those conditions are in the application on how they can spend the money, when they get the money,
What they have to submit.
what paperwork is required, whether or not they have to give bids, things like that, and that's all stuff you would consider before you would accept the grant application.
Well, the way I look at it, it's a CRA facade grant for a residence or a business in the CRA district. Once the work is done, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And just benefits the CRA district, regardless of, it's just a benefit for the CRA district. Once the work's done, it's done. You know, if people decide to sell after that, fine, let them sell it. But at least what we're after is to improve the CRA district, and if that work has been done and it has improved the looks of a residence or a business, then what we're after has been accomplished.
That's true.
I would, Madam Chair, point out that there are two different parts to this subsection, and one involves the what happens if you sell or transfer, but that first part is just saying that the applicant agrees that whatever improvements there are would stay in place for 2 years. So those are two things you could decide between. Even if you got rid of the provision that they couldn't sell or transfer without paying back some of the money, you could still leave in the first clause concerning keeping the improvements in place. So if you gave them money for an overhang, they're agreeing that they would leave that overhang for a period of 2 years. They wouldn't take the CRA's money, make the improvement, and take it down.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Member Kessler?
Can I respond to that, please?
Sure.
I understand the intention, but then again, it's almost like trying to micromanage every little detail. If they took it down because it ripped, or I mean, it has a life of its own. And what you're describing to me is an element of trust. And Member Newcomb, I'm glad you brought that up because of the point of not willing to show the books, the history of the CRA in this city, and talking to former commissioners. Basically, nothing got paid till they turned in the receipts, and then it was taken care of. There was proof of how the money was spent, and we did run into that incident of where the books wouldn't be open, didn't have to, it was stonewalled. And I think that's exactly where it may have come from. But I think we're creating more bureaucracy. And actually, what you just mentioned ties to, I don't object to the hiring of our executive director, but I do object to the way that job description was written, because there is a transfer of power and there's no mention of the commission. And both of these type of contracts are related. And I think we need to be very careful in how we do things. And sometimes, like in this regards to this particular agreement with the monies released to do a project for improvement, you usually can see a facade improvement, or if you can't, I mean, you know, it's structural. But I don't see anybody undoing that unless there's a hurricane and then you have to start all over.
Yeah.
Would they have to pay that back, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway.
Member Barnes?
What would the commissioners, members that object to this, what would you suggest we do with 2.4? Commissioners or those that object, like Commissioner Gestrin objects to this?
I don't think we need it.
So
Strike it out.
you would suggest take it out?
Yeah.
Can we take that out?
Before you do that.
But I'm just saying, can we take it out? I'm not saying we do it. I'm saying, can it be taken out and keep the document intact?
Yes, this is within your discretion.
Okay.
This is other CRAs that have similar grant programs do this, but this would not. There would not be a statutory component that would require you to do it. This would.
And just as a comment, I think, well, everybody's comment is valid. I think this provision was put in because of an application we had where they talked about selling the property immediately, where they were going to put a roof on, wanted a roof on, and then it was on the market, in fact. So I think that's where this comes in, as a precautionary measure or something. We don't want to improve a property to give value to it for somebody to sell. That was the provision for this, not to. And I think the provision that's in here that makes it prorated is also a plus, because if somebody does a improvement and within a year they go to sell, this isn't $10,000. No. This is $1,000. It's a small amount. if they're selling it, they've made the improvement, they've recouped the improvement in the sale price of the property, and therefore they probably should give it back. So while I think it does limit some things, I think it's a good provision.
I have to agree with you, and that's exactly what I think the discussion was, that if, someone could buy a house and then turn around and apply for a CRA grant for money to fix it up and then turn around and flip it, or as you know, the fact is that they could come in, maybe even if they lived in the house for a while, they could come in, or a business, and make improvements based upon some monies they received from the CRA and then turn around and sell it. And I think that was the main reason it was put in there, as a protection against that type of event happening.
I'm comfortable with it the way it is.
Yeah, that's the way I understood.
Williams.
That's the only one I understood too. If somebody want to take it and make a profit off of it, it's not to try to put a hindrance on somebody. If a hurricane come through, we ain't got no control over that. And I'm quite sure we got enough common sense to sit up and say, okay, a hurricane came, we ain't gonna make this person do whatever. But I think the main reason was just for somebody not taking this money and make a profit off of it. And that's the main reason for it.
Member Gestrin.
Thank you. Listen to ourselves for just a minute. Making a profit off of it. The goal is improvement of a building's the facade. And once that's achieved, even if they take it and sell it and make a profit, there's nothing wrong with the profit. And I don't care if they flip it or whether they have an unforeseen circumstance. They can sell it to the next person, but the improvement is still there. Especially like the painting of a house. I mean, eventually you'll paint it again, but I don't think the making of a profit should be penalized. I mean, you may have those that flip buildings, but at least you've got tax dollars paid for the improvement of that building. I think we're just trying to control something we don't have to.
Can I?
Member Bass.
As a business owner in High Springs for 17 years, I have done more improvements to my property and never even knew the CRA existed until this past May. And I paid for everything myself. I don't think that you should hold anybody accountable if they are trying to improve a piece of property in the CRA district. From what I understand, that's what the CRA Commission is all about, is improving the CRA district. And if it's improved, it's improved. And I know that you're going to have some people that take advantage of it. That's the world. But you have so many businesses in this town that have been struggling to make it. And they are still struggling to make it. And I think you're penalizing residents and businesses when you hold them accountable for 2 years for a resident and 5 years for a business. And I'm just going to add one more thing. I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. When I had to put a new roof on that building over there, it had to go before the historic district. We were told we could not put a metal roof on that building, that it had to be shingles because that's what it was, and it's in the historic district. I didn't have any problem with that, but that whole process of going through that, no one ever mentioned to me that there was help for that. $12,000 for that roof. I put a ramp on that building that I paid for myself, trying to improve businesses in this town. And it's like you get slapped in the face. And I'm just speaking for businesses primarily. Now I have a home in the district, and I would not ask for any money to help with anything from here on. But I am going to stand up for the businesses and the residents in this town. It is time, if this is a CRA commission, it's time for the CRA to help the people it's supposed to be helping. And that's how I feel about it.
Well, I guess, we different opinions. We are here to help, and that's why, at least from this particular board, I think has gone out of its way and is trying to make those things better, to make it better for the businesses, to let them know
about the CRA and what's available. And if you look at the fact that we've raised the amount of money for businesses that they can now be given a grant for, up to $35,000 and $40,000.
I realize all that,
I-
but this CRA has been in effect for what, 30 years?
I understand that.
29 years.
86.
I understand that.
29 years.
But I don't think that's a
But
reason at this
holding a
point.
business responsible to make an improvement on their property, once that improvement is made, it is made. It is done. And it's only an improvement for the CRA district.
It is an improvement, but I think the fact is that you have to be cognizant of the fact that it's still taxpayers' dollars, and it's those people in that district, it's their taxpayers' dollars, but we as a board, I think, have a responsibility to protect what's happening. And if someone is out there trying to profit from it, then I have a problem with that.
So y'all have had instances where people have profited? They've done it for profit?
I don't know. I'm just saying we now are trying to be more aware of what this board is doing and how things are done, you know.
I have a question.
Yes, Member Gilster.
How are we going to, as a board, to enforce this? And what recourse would a person have if they disagreed with the decision made by the CRA and they say, no, you have to pay it back? Are they going to have to take us to court? I mean, where's the enforcement? Who's going to watch after it? Who's going to oversee every improvement to make sure that they've passed their 2-year and 5-year deadlines? I think what we're dealing with is not just, I mean, yes, it's taxpayer dollars, but it's back to control and trust. And I agree there hasn't been a whole lot of that maybe recently, but, you know, how's the city going to keep up with everybody, you know, and every dollar, you know, how's it going to be enforced, you know? And where's the, if you don't like the decision, what provision is there for that individual or business or a challenge?
Member Barnes?
After 3 years of taking the CRA from not doing much to getting a director, doing the police theater, doing all that, I now think we need to move forward with this. You can say where is going to be the enforcement to do that? Well, where's going to be the enforcement to make sure they fill out the application correctly and didn't put something wrong on it? If it takes moving this document forward tonight, removing that paragraph, I'll remove it. If it takes moving this forward tonight, leaving it on, I'll vote to leave it on. But I want it to move forward to get this started for this young lady to get out there and talk to the people and get this done. So if those that don't like it, you want to make a motion, go ahead and move forward to take it off. Let's see what happens, and then we'll move it forward. But just I don't think you're going to have that many people have a problem with this. It's just gonna it's gonna be a fine. It'll work fine. Somebody doesn't sells the place in a year and a half. You know what? We may never do a thing. So who knows? But if you don't have this done, you're not going to see any improvements. People coming to the commission for any money.
Member Newcomb?
Thank you. I think I will speak not only for myself, but I think I speak for a lot of people that are up here and a lot of people that are in the audience. Look, we went through this whole process of interviewing and having applicants submit applications and hiring or offering to hire Ms. Rodriguez. Amazingly enough, and it's public record, I was surprised at how many of the board members voted exactly the same. So, I mean, if we are going to put our trust in hiring
someone to facilitate the CRA as the CRA executive director. If we're going to have enough faith to hire that person, then certainly I would hope, from having read her resume and having her speak to us, that we have enough faith for her to have an open door policy that members of the community that are in the historical district as a business or a residence that would like assistance, that they can go to her office whenever her office hours, you'll have to post your office hours, but whenever her office is available, that they can go in there and ask her questions. And then she's going to have to present that to the board because she is responsible to the CRA board. And I believe that this young woman has got sense enough to make some good decisions. I certainly would not have voted for her if I didn't think that she had it together enough to make some good decisions. I would hope that the members of the new CRA board, which entails the commissioners and 2 business owners, and, you know, if I roll off or whoever rolls off, whoever comes on here, I would hope that this little town has always been a town of people that wanted to help their neighbors. It hasn't been somebody that I'm out to go get at somebody because they got a little more something than what I got. So I would hope that we would take into consideration that if someone did get a grant and they improved their home that was in the historic district, or they improved their building, good. We need some improvement. I guarantee you that whatever this board gives them is not going to be enough in today's business world to complete the upgrade. It's not. I listened to Miss Bass about how much money she's poured into buildings. Well, you know, my grandfather started that drugstore in 1919, and I tell you what, I wish to God I hadn't been so sentimental and I'd sold that stupid thing 10 years ago. I'd been money ahead. But as it is, evidently there was a higher plan because, you know what, there's more latchkey kids coming down there to that place that don't have to go home to an empty house than you would ever believe. And what a great thing that is. I've seen people go in there and stop off and ask for just a simple prayer. What a great thing that is. So instead of worrying about whether we've got this nailed down to the penny, and we may regret it. That's the truth. I mean, we could. But it won't be because we didn't try to do our very best. And I say let's some way, somehow, either take it out, put it forward, but let's move forward and let's get this little girl hired and let's get on the bandwagon and get this town looking like it should.
Member Gestern?
I think we're dealing with 2 different agreements. This is for the facade agreement, even though they are related. And I'm for, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think economic development, there's a lot to it, and if you have the right combination, something can be done instead of just talking about it. But my concern is, in both agreements, it's just like on page 3, you go to page 4 under the section we're talking about, 2.4, and it says everything, it looks like it's at the sole agreement of the sole decision discretion of the CRA executive director. In the last 2 meetings of the CRA, there has been mention that the commission would not even be involved. I don't know when that discussion transpired or was agreed to, but that's a change in governance. It's a change in oversight. And either you're going to have the executive director is going to be accountable to the commission and the taxpayer, or not by what that job description was. And I mean, and if they're making all the decisions, I mean, we're talking about negotiating with, I mean, when does the commission come in, or just disband it? I mean, you know, but make a decision in make sure that it isn't just done in the paper and not really discussed openly in the public what the real intentions are. Originally, it was discussed that the CRA executive director is accountable to the city manager and the commission, but anyway, that's changing the job description. But this is dealing with the facade and agreement with those who use the city grant monies to improve the buildings. And that improvement's there whether you sell it or not. And although I'm just concerned about the wording in this agreement where it looks like there is no accountability of the executive director back to the commission. So, and even though we have good intentions, that doesn't mean once we're gone that, whoever's hired today may not be the executive director a year from now. So you've got to look at that. Even though there's an anxiousness to move forward, our decisions have impact years down the road. Of course, if the CRA district is not expanded beyond 2 years, it won't be that long. So.
Member Barnes, let's make this the last comment.
I'll make a motion that we approve the facade grant as written.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor made by Member Barnes, seconded by Member Williams, to approve the facade agreement as written. Any further comment? Any public comment? All right, seeing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying no.
No.
Motion fails 3-3.
Okay. Madam Chair,
Yes.
what did your loan used to be? What, $1,000?
Yes.
Okay. You know what? If somebody want to take $1,000 from the city of High Springs, shame on them. Take it out. Let's move on. Shame on them. Somebody want to steal $1,000 and try to make a profit off of it. I know what the intention of it was. I really did. I really know what the intention of it was. It's not to try to stop nobody from trying to improve their business. It was an intention for those that will try to take advantage of this. So for the sake of moving on and try to do what's best for this city, $1,000, again, I say, if they want to sham the city out of $1,000, shame on them, and let's just move on. So I will make a motion to take it out.
And approve, and then approve it with it removed?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
All right, we have another motion.
Discussion.
Just let me,
Okay.
please. We have a motion on the floor made by Member Williams, seconded by Member Barnes, to take section 2.4 out of the facade, the residential facade agreement. Any discussion?
Okay.
Member Newcomb.
Yes, I think that was the crux of the problem, was that needed to be taken out. That seemed to be the thing that was holding up. But I would also like to make a suggestion at this time for the board to consider, is that it is true that there is nothing under the Article 3 project plans, whereas it says that the applicant or the CRA executive director has to come back and report at all to the CRA board. And that seems to be a problem, I think, is what Commissioner Gestern was saying.
Just a minute.
I don't know.
Member Johnson. I'm sorry, Member Attorney Johnson.
Yeah.
I got members on my.
I know.
I know that the original grant specifies that information.
Right.
But, and I tend to agree with what Member Newcomb is saying, that there probably should be something in the agreement, and this agreement as well, that maybe reiterates some of the things that are in the actual grant application itself, that we should include.
Yeah, because as it is, while I read over this at home before I came, but I'm looking at this again, the agreement for the facade improvements, and the thing that I noticed is that it's over and over again, it says that, the applicant will correspond with the executive director, which is what the board has said that it wants. But at some point in time,
that executive director needs to come back to the board and say, you know, this applicant made an application for $1,000 or whatever, but now they want to change the windows, or they want to do this, or they want to do that. And what is your pleasure?
I know that the
the
job
planning board?
description says that the CRA, that the CRA executive director has to make reports
Right,
to
right,
the
to us,
board,
right.
you know, and keep them advised of things. Whether or not that's sufficient information,
I don't know.
know.
Just
Remember-
putting that up in the air for you.
Attorney Johnson.
I would certainly think that your executive director is reporting back to you.
Okay.
This person is the one interfacing with, you know, if somebody has a problem, a situation with their application. Currently, our executive director is your city manager.
Correct.
They go to Mr. Booth.
That's right.
Now they would go to your new executive director and say, I'm having an issue with my application. This is what's happened. And then
Okay.
your executive director can give them advice. And if there's an issue, come before you as a board.
Okay. Okay.
And whether or not that needs to be in an agreement between the CRA and this person you're giving a grant to, you know, if you want language in there that would say the executive director will always come back before the CRA, or that's something that can go in your employment contract with the executive director, because it's really more of an issue you would have
Right.
between
right.
you as a board and what your expectations of what your executive director is
Correct.
doing. Are there some things that you're going to give her authority to approve on her own if someone comes in with a minor
Right.
change? Is that something you as a board would have to decide, or
Because
do you
at
want
the
her?
same time that you're not trying to micromanage what people are doing with their facade grants, you don't want to have, if you're going to hire her, you don't want to micromanage everything that she's making a decision on either, I wouldn't think.
Exactly. So I'm happy to add more language to this that would include language from the actual application and what some of those requirements were. I'm happy to do that and bringing that back to you. And then if there's specifics in here that you want in terms of how you want the CRA director to report back to you. Some of that, I think,
That wouldn't be in
what
this.
would be best for you guys to discuss with your executive director, so she understands what the directions from you are.
Right.
I don't think that necessarily needs to be in this agreement.
Right. Member Barnes?
She was first.
I'm sorry, Member Guest.
Thank you. I don't want us to rush through everything just to move forward and get it done, because our decisions impact further down the road in the future. Either the commission's going to have oversight, and what has to be decided, which affects not only this agreement, but it also affects your agreement as the executive director, which was not really worked out how this is going to work, because there has been discussion in the last 2 CRA meetings that the CRA board may be given to the CRA district itself and commission no longer involved. That's never been decided. So before I think this facade grant, you need to strike in it where it says until those decisions are made, that it's the sole discretion of the executive director, because what you'll get is an individual who is appointed, making decisions not accountable to the taxpayer. And if they're not accountable to the commission, and the CRA board is given to another group of people, somewhere along you lose your transparency. And that has to be thought about, because of the way it was advertised. There's no mention in this job description. The commission's not mentioned one time. And if there's an intention to give this board to another group without taxpayer commission representation, you're giving tax dollars. There's no accountability to the voters, to the taxpayers themselves. So, when you've got an appointed board, that's a whole different thing. And we ran into that in one period of time where those who were a part of the CRA wouldn't even open their books and show how the taxpayer money was spent. So I'm just saying to caution.
Member Barnes?
We've got a motion on the floor to
Yes.
approve this with the 2.4 removed. And so I'm going to call the question in a second here, but I think, again, we can move this forward. I don't think we need any more changes. I think the board can make changes down the road. The board can see how this works, work with Amanda, see what's going on. It'll all come together. And so I'm going to call the question on approving the facade grant with 2.4 removed.
The motion's called. The question's been called.
Well, if everybody would look at the executive director's contract, it says in here, it says in here what we're saying, what everybody's saying.
Question's been called. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying no. Motion passes 6-0. All right, so now we're back to the employment agreement that hopefully everyone has in front of them. I don't, let me ask this, I'm assuming, I know you all indicated you didn't have it with you, but have you looked at it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right,
Okay, and I'm not sure how, if you
Why don't
kind of
you
want me
just
to
go-
go by page, section by section.
no, I would just say on page, I would basically ask on page 1 if there are any questions, page 2, you know,
Okay.
that type of thing.
Well, and I will say that the question I had on page 1 involves the term. I believe that you all had indicated before that you were interested in a 1-year term.
Correct.
But I just kind of wanted clarification if that's acceptable, if that's what you were looking for.
Everybody okay with that?
No
Joe?
objection.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
Okay. On page 2, essentially, I took what you had in your job description, and that's what I listed out as the duties. And that's where I got the general description and the specific. So paragraphs 2 and 3. So I don't know if there was objections to anything in there, but that's where I got that language from.
Any objections?
No. 3A is quite clear. Work with the CRA on its related programs.
Member Bass?
Yeah, under paragraph 3, J and O, it's talking about CRA-owned properties.
The CRA does not own any properties here, but that doesn't mean that you won't.
Okay.
And the statute allows for the CRA to own property within the district, so.
Like we had talked about buying some property for parking.
Yeah.
That would, at one point.
In some places, the CRAs, just.
Right.
Okay.
Section 3 has been an issue here before, but so what I have is that the executive director reports to the CRA board, and authority for action binding the city comes from the CRA board. Section 4 is on evaluation. I took my best guess at how I thought you might want to proceed with an evaluation, but I wasn't sure exactly on what timeframes you wanted to do evaluations and how you wanted to do the evaluations.
I think it should be an annual evaluation with the ability to evaluate if the board were decided to evaluate some other time to be able to do that. If it may be normally it would be a 1-year evaluation, but we may want to do an evaluation after 3 months or 4 months, since we have a brand new director, to let that individual know how they're doing. But if we had a person that's been here for a couple of years, an annual evaluation would, and that person's been working out well, then an annual evaluation would be sufficient. So I don't want to stop us from being able to do an evaluation sometime in between if the board feels it's necessary. But I think typically you would do a 1-year evaluation.
And that would be an easy change. I just you all had said 6 months at one point, but it would be very easy to change that at least every 6 months to annual evaluation and leave on the
But may
second clause,
evaluate.
but may evaluate performance at any time.
Right. And I think personally, at least since we're first starting out, we would probably want to do something in between that 1 year period. So I just want to make sure that we would have that ability to do that as well. Member Gestrin?
Are you speaking like possibly a probation
No,
period or?
no. I'm just saying typically we would do a 1 year annual evaluation. But we may want to bring the person, may want to do an evaluation between times for some reason. And like I said, because this is new to us, the person is this is the first time we've had an executive director, and we want to evaluate that, give that person some feedback.
Right, and I think that's a good thing. Again, in your, you took this right from the job description as advertised. I'm still concerned the commission's not mentioned at all, and commission has had oversight over the CRA board. And because of the discussions in the last 2 meetings of totally changing who's the accountability to the executive board, the CRA board, I don't know, I mean, there's no accountability to the commission at all in this
Well,
agreement.
Section 3 certainly says.
But I've got my hand raised.
I'm sorry.
Right. As I understand it, Section 3 does say that it works with the CRA, the Chamber of Commerce, the city government, and all appropriate city departments to formulate. Now, my understanding is that the CRA has been, probably always will be, made up of the commission plus 2 representatives from the business world at large in the historic district. Is that not correct?
It is, that is the way it is set up under by ordinance at this point in time.
By ordinance.
If it were to change, it would have to come before the commission and would have to be done by ordinance. The change would have to be done by ordinance through the city commission.
Right, okay.
May I make a suggestion? Go back and listen to the last 2 CRA meetings where the discussion entered into changes. As I think meeting in September and October to that, and that in the future, possibly, there wouldn't even be a commissioner on the board. So that's already apparently being discussed.
No.
Wait a minute, that's what was discussed in these 2 meetings. She needs to go back and listen to them.
What was said was that the commission could, down the road, change that, and where there would not be any commissioners on the board. The commission, the city commission could change it. There's nothing out there, no one has said that that's a possibility or that someone was thinking of that.
Well, because it entered into the conversation, it was out of the blue for me, so I immediately saw that as a suggested change, and it came from more than one person in those last 2 meetings.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Do you want to change Section 4 to annually?
Yes.
Is there any objection from anybody?
No.
Any objection from Amanda?
Okay.
I'll make a motion to change that wording from 6 months to annually.
All right, there's a motion on the floor made by Member Barnes. Any second?
Second.
Member Bass has made a second to change Section 4 evaluation to an annual evaluation, but the language "but may evaluate performance at any time" would be left in.
Yes.
Any
Correct.
further discussion on that particular issue? All right, seeing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying no. Motion passes 6-0. All right, that's Section 4.
I would just like to point out, I'm very happy that Ms. Rodriguez is here while we're going through the contract, but after we make changes, we're going to send her a clean copy so that she has adequate time to review it, and if she wants her attorney to review it. So
Absolutely.
just wanted her to make sure she wasn't
Agreeing to
bound
something.
by anything.
Right.
Right, that you'll have time to look this over.
Okay. All right, Section 5.
This is on compensation, and some of the questions I had involved mileage, and I wasn't sure how we were going to work that out. I assume that your executive director is probably going to have to travel, and you're going to want her to travel for certain things. So it would be our suggestion that she would get mileage pursuant to the reimbursement Florida statute.
I don't have a problem with that. On section 2, I think there was a suggestion about cost of living adjustments that the general employees could get, and I would not want that in there. I think that is a decision by the board and what is budgeted for that individual to receive raises. That's my opinion. I don't know what anyone else feels about that under section 2. I'm assuming you saw some of those changes that were proposed by our the finance director. I think had made some proposed or raised some questions, not proposed changes on that. Yes, Member Bass.
If I'm not mistaken, this is supposed to be a contract employee, right? Isn't that what was decided?
Yeah.
Mine's different.
Is this a newer one?
I sent one to everyone last week,
Right.
and then the finance director looked at it and responded to some of my questions.
I guess I'm missing one piece here.
What we
so
received
that-
tonight is the updated copy.
Yes,
Yes.
what you
This
got
is
in
the
front of
correct-
you.
Okay, so I'll read off of hers. I'm talking about number 3. I'm talking about number 3 then.
Yes, I see what you're talking about. The paragraph states says the CRA board may increase the executive director's salary by motion in its sole discretion within the confines of the budget. The executive director shall be entitled to receive the cost of living adjustment if general employees of the city receive the same in any fiscal year.
That last
And
sentence
so
is
that's
one I
that's
would
why
not
that's
be-
highlighted in case that was an issue for you.
Because this is a contract employee. Yeah.
Pleasure of the board on that issue?
It's fine, leave it in.
Fine, what?
Leave it in.
No, I'm
Take it
saying
out.
that last sentence,
Well,
Take it out.
Highlight it.
to take it out?
Yes.
that it is up to the board as far as increases. You would leave the first sentence, but take the second sentence out.
Well, that's right, she is contract worker.
All right.
Take it out. Sorry.
Take it out.
And on number 2, excuse me. Go ahead. On number 2, this is what I've done all my life. I'm a proofer. On item number 2, it should read an exempt salaried employee.
Edit. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
Where's that?
On
It's the
number
word
2,
A
it
instead of
A-
should be
A-
and, the word and,
What page?
3 of 9.
page 3.
There's a grammatical error in section 5, paragraph 2.
Teach you a lot.
Item number 5 is mileage added.
Yes, and so what I have in there is that if she's traveling outside of the city of High Springs, ordinance of CRA business, she would be entitled to that statutory reimbursement, but that she would, where possible, inform you of travel. There's actually an extra period in there as well that needs to go.
So that, we're leaving that in.
What?
We're putting
leaving-
this in.
Oh, okay. Yes, that's my suggestion, and then but she is still responsible for paying her own car insurance, things like that. You would just be paying reimbursements.
Any objections to that
Travel.
line?
No.
Okay, so section 5 as prepared is okay.
So it's the executive director where possible or when possible?
Yeah.
You've got the executive
Yeah,
director where possible? What do you want, where?
It should
Yeah.
be where,
Okay,
W-H-E-R.
yeah.
I had to highlight it. Okay, then we have section 6, this particular page has lots of things on it. Section 6, health, disability, and life insurance benefits.
Right, and some of these, because she's a part-time
Right.
employee, and then, if certainly if this position went to full-time, then we would need to make adjustments
Right.
here, but there would be other adjustments in a contract than if this was to go full-time.
Any problem with section 6? Section 7, PTO,
Shouldn't that say paid time off?
Right.
yes,
And as part-time, there wouldn't be
right.
PTO unless that was something offered.
Any problem with section 7?
And retirement, she would be entitled to the same retirement offerings of other city employees.
I think the retirement thing, the retirement language should reference FRS, though.
Okay.
Because that's what we offer to our employees. And that's the pension that the only pension we'd be able to offer.
Even a
And by
contract
state law, we
employee?
have to provide it to all part-time.
Yeah, we're required to. I mean, okay with section 8 referencing FRS? Section 9, everyone okay with that?
Fine.
Okay, then we go to section.
I have a
sorry.
question on
Yes,
that.
ma'am. Member Bass.
This is a contract employee, right?
It is.
But it's under the city, so
Yes.
you're mandated to cover.
Correct. Okay. Section 10, general business expenses. My understanding is we are providing an office and computer and such, that may be required. The city is providing that information.
We're providing computer, software, we hooked up to the internet.
Member Bass?
And I don't know how I feel about it really, but the cell phone, I just feel like the executive director is going to be on the road a lot, dealing with businesses, dealing with residences, and I'm not so sure the executive director should be responsible for her cell phone.
Good question.
She's not going to be in an office 8 hours a day or 4 hours a day or whatever.
And I think the city gets a discount because we've got other employees on a city plan. If that's something you wanted to do, I don't think that would be a problem at all. The CRA would just need to cover that part for the city to add her to a city plan.
Member Guest? Yes.
Thank you. Just a suggestion. I think we're rushing this contract. Certainly, not only out, it needs to be reviewed carefully, also giving opportunity to Ms. Rodriguez to review the changes. You can wait and, of course, there's a governance change and, member to this board in a couple of days and, just review it again. It doesn't have to be rushed tonight, although I think it does need to be finalized, but there are a lot of changes here. My suggestion is have another meeting as well, not before Thursday, and you can do whatever you want to make sure that it's right and correct before we approve it.
Well, once this is done, it's going to have to come back before this board for approval, for final approval.
Okay.
So
It's going to go from you to her, from her back to you, back to
Yeah, that's up to you.
Well, she gets a
You can
chance.
certainly approve this tonight with the changes we've discussed and direct us
Right.
to send it to her, and if she signs it, great, and if she has questions, bring it back, or if that's not what you want to do, if you want to
No.
direct me to make the changes, bring it back and vote, and then, that's...
It'll go, my opinion, Commissioner, is we make these changes, goes to you, goes to her, she agrees, signs, it comes back. She's got a problem, comes back to the board. So,
all right, well, let's discuss that at the end of this, okay? How we do that.
Can I back up?
Yes, Member
Under
Bass.
section 9, the third line down, it says from time to time by required, it should be B.
May from time to time be required, correct?
Security check.
Ed's docking my
so-
pay for each one of these.
On the cell phone, we can offer that put some language in there that the city's discount on however it's properly worded for cell phone coverage will be offered to the executive director.
Sure.
So she would be under the city plan. She would have,
Yes.
okay.
She may not want to do that. Find out. See how many calls she gets, see what she does for a month or two, and
Yeah, and
See
it
what
may
happens.
change down the road, depending on
Yeah.
how it works out. All right, section 11, which is dues and subscriptions.
I wasn't sure what you would be interested in paying for. You have in the budget $500 for this line item. So I put that in there.
It's still there, it hasn't been spent. We need to become a member of the Florida League of Cities, CRA group, and they do meet, they have classes.
Right.
We need them there, so.
I'm okay with the proposed language for section 11.
Fine.
Everybody else okay with that? Any problems? Okay. Any problems with section 12, professional development? That's budgeted as well. That's up to $2,500, which I think is important. All right. What am I?
page 6, I'm okay.
Anything else on page 5 of page, which is section 13, 14, and partial 15 at this point? Anybody okay with that? Member Bass?
Got a question.
Yes,
On
ma'am.
section 13, see if I can find it. Yeah, let me see if okay, section 13, it says that the executive director can be removed without cause at any time. But then down in section 14, it says if the executive director voluntarily resigns, she has to give us 30 days notice.
There's a difference there.
There is?
Yeah. Voluntary is she decides that she doesn't want to work for us anymore, obviously, and she has to give us 30-day notice. The other one is if we as a board decide that we don't want her anymore for whatever reason, then we can say you're gone.
Without any notice.
Correct. That's an at-will.
That's a governmental
Yes.
thing. Okay.
Employment.
Just had a question about it.
Okay. Any other questions on that? All right, page 6. Anybody have any questions on page 6? No?
Wait a minute. Section 15.
15? Expectation of work hours?
Yeah. First sentence, you need to strike A. She's expected to work
A part-time, I see. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or either put
Working
a
for
part-time
free now.
job.
Work part-time is fine. Anything else on that?
That's it.
Okay. Page 7. Any questions, problems with page 7? Okay. Page 8. See any problems? No? All right. So we've had one motion, which was to change section 4. And other than some, I think, the deletion of a sentence under compensation, dealing with cost of living, and some Scrivener's errors or corrections,
And cell phone.
and the cell phone, that would be the whole contract. So, should entertain a motion.
And then this won't get accepted till after, after December 5th, so December 1st. So you'll have different executives, mayors,
Right.
that'll have to be changed.
Well, and the date will have to be changed. The
All that, yeah.
Correct.
contract all starts December 1st, so we'll have some minor changes like that.
And it may be that we could, that we could possibly hold
you get it?
after,
get it.
obviously after November 20th, that we could hold a special board meeting just for this one item so we can get things moving.
I have a
I'm
question.
sorry, Member Newcomb?
Yes, on section 21, on page 8 of 9, down there where it says failure by a party to complain of any act of failure to act of the other party or to declare the other party in default. What does that mean?
That's
Basically,
legal
if
language.
you do not, sometimes in contracts, if the other party defaults, does something they're not supposed to, and you don't complain about it right away, then the argument is that you've waived it, and you no longer get to complain about whatever bad behavior the other side did. So this is saying, even if the other side defaults and the CRA doesn't do anything right away, we haven't waived our ability to say that you've
To do
defaulted
something.
in that provision.
All right, we got it
Thanks,
now.
guys. Okay, so.
We thought we were gonna catch you again.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the contract with the.
I'll make a
changes.
motion to accept the contract with the changes made tonight.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor made by Member Barnes, seconded by Member Williams to approve the employment agreement for the executive director as discussed with the different changes tonight. Any other comments? Anything from the public? And all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed indicate by saying no.
No.
Motion passes 5-1 with Member Gestrin opposing.
And I can make those changes right away, and I will forward it to Ms. Rodriguez and make sure you all have a copy
Correct.
of what I send to her
Okay.
as well.
Thank you. Is there any other business before the board? Member Bass?
Are we gonna be meeting anytime soon? A planned meeting?
Not a planned one at this point. Where we'll have to wait until the changeover this Thursday, really,
Okay.
because the board makeup will change.
Okay.
But there, like I said, we may want to call a special meeting just to approve the contract so we can get things going as soon as possible. All right, I would like to thank Member Barnes and Member Gestrin for serving on the board. I know it's one of the duties as a commissioner,
Maybe not, maybe that is.
but your input and your suggestions and having been on the board is greatly appreciated, and we look forward to you still coming before the CRA board in the future and letting us know what can be done and whatever else you have on your mind.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, take a motion to adjourn.
So
I'd
moved.
like to give a
Sorry.
quick update downtown.
Yes, sir.
Christmas season is coming, lights are up, banners are going up. We are going to sweep the streets this week, get ready for the parade and the lighting of the Christmas tree by the Chamber of Commerce Friday. We're going to light the older tree. The new tree is up.
Charlie Brown tree.
Charlie
is what you're
Brown
referring to?
tree, but
The Charlie Brown tree.
I'm sorry, that's their tree. There is a new one there, but doesn't have any power yet, and you certainly will have a tree next year that'll be much larger, better suited, but we're all going to celebrate the Charlie Brown tree this year and say goodbye to it.
Or leave it alone and let it grow.
Whack, 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 whack.
We're not tearing it down. We're only going to say goodbye as the official Christmas tree.
Cover
And
it
so
up with
downtown will
Linus's
look a lot
blanket.
better. Flowers are being planted here in the next couple of days after the freeze.
Yes.
After the
Yes.
freezes. And so, so we're getting ready for Christmas and everything is good. There is some action about the downtown streets. DOT wants to do turning lanes off of First Street, having a problem. Actually, you want to 4-lane it, but there isn't enough room to 4-lane it. So they're trying now to create some turning lanes so that the traffic will flow much easier. The traffic count there indicates that it should be a 4-lane, but there isn't any way to get it in there. So they're going to do whatever they can do.
It's amazing they finally figured that out. It's amazing, after all these years, they
Well,
finally figured out
Sir,
that.
I'm actually going to tell you, when we were out there looking for handicap parking,
Yeah.
they saw all the trucks going, and I think it dawned on them that we have become overwhelmed with traffic.
I know.
All right, motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Meeting adjourned
Got it.
at 7:18.
really
Thank you
need
for
to?
coming.
And time passed.